Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're exploring something crucial: sustainable development, and we're focusing on Turkey's progress toward achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Those are the SDGs.
SDGs. You got it. Specifically, we're zeroing in on SDG 9.
Industry.
Industry.
Innovation.
Innovation and
Infrastructure.
infrastructure. Yeah. You might be thinking, okay, infrastructure, that's roads or bridges, right?
Yeah.
But it's so much bigger than that.
It is much bigger.
We're talking about the foundations for a thriving economy and a society where everyone can access essential services.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. Reliable transportation systems not only get people where they need to go, but they also connect businesses to markets and ensure that essential goods like food and medicine reach communities.
Right, like the lifeline.
Exactly, and access to clean energy that powers homes, businesses, and fuels economic growth.
So it's about the physical structures, but also the systems and technologies that enable a country to grow and prosper sustainably without depleting resources or harming the environment for future generations.
That's what we're talking about.
And for this deep dive, we've got some great sources. A scholarly article from the USAC University Journal of Social Sciences that analyzes Turkey's performance on SDG 9, as well as data from the UN's SDG tracker and the World Bank.
Fantastic sources.
But before we jump into Turkey's specific situation, I think it would be helpful to take a step back and look at the big picture. How did this idea of sustainable development even come about?
Well, it might surprise you to learn that this concept, which feels so urgent, now really gained traction in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
Imagine back then the world was just starting to grasp the potential environmental consequences of unchecked economic growth.
So what triggered this shift in thinking?
A landmark report called The Limits to Growth, published in 1972 by the Club of Rome, really shook things up.
Okay.
It challenged the prevailing assumption that economic growth could continue indefinitely without considering the finite nature of our planet's resources.
It's amazing to think how groundbreaking that report was for its time, kind of a wake-up call, right?
Absolutely. It sparked a global debate and really set the stage for the first UN conference on the human environment in Stockholm, also in 1972.
Wow, same year.
This conference brought nations together to acknowledge that environmental problems transcended national borders and required international cooperation.
So you could say the 1970s was a pivotal decade for the environmental movement. Where did things go from there?
The momentum continued to build. In 1987, the Brundtland Report commissioned by the UN gave us the widely accepted definition of sustainable development that we still use today.
Let's hear it.
Meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Powerful stuff.
This report was hugely influential and laid the groundwork for the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro, also known as the Earth Summit.
The Earth Summit. I remember that being a big deal even as a kid. What came out of that?
The Earth Summit resulted in Agenda 21, an ambitious plan for global action on sustainable development. And it's interesting to note that Turkey, even back in the 1990s, formally integrated the concept of sustainable development into its own national development plans, signaling its commitment to this global effort.
So from a global perspective, there's been a growing awareness of the need for sustainable development, and Turkey seems to have been on board with this shift from early on.
That's right.
Now let's fast forward to the present. The UN has laid out these 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap to a more sustainable future for all by 2030.
A big, ambitious plan.
And as we mentioned, we're focusing specifically on SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure.
Right.
But before we dive into the details of SDG 9, our research uses something called a systems approach to analyze sustainable development. Can you help us understand what that means and why it's important?
You've hit on a crucial point. The systems approach is all about understanding that economic, social, and environmental issues are deeply intertwined. Imagine a tangled knot. You can't just pull on one strand without affecting the others. So to achieve true sustainability, you can't just focus on, say, reducing carbon emissions without considering the social impact of transitioning to a green economy.
So it's like a puzzle where all the pieces have to fit together to create a complete picture that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now let's zero in on SDG 9 and the 8 targets it lays out for achieving sustainable and resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation.
These targets encompass everything from developing quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure to promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation.
Okay, so pretty broad scope. What are some of the key areas Turkey is focusing on within SDG 9?
One major area is transportation. Turkey relies heavily on road transportation, which, as you might imagine, has both environmental and economic consequences. Think traffic congestion, air pollution, and high transportation costs.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be.